Brill. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for joining. Just get things set up and everybody coming through. Hope you're all having a great day. It's great to see you all. And again, thanks very much for joining. Just let me get my details up. Fantastic. So thanks for everyone who's joined us to discuss all things career break. To give you a little bit of a background, hackajob and tech returners have teamed up on a number of initiatives throughout the past several months with a common goal of unbiased tech hiring in the UK. If you're not familiar with tech returners or hackajob, I'll give you a quick introduction now. Tech returners aims to remove the barriers that returners of all ages, genders, and life circumstances face after a career break, and as a result, help tackle the skills shortages in tech by offering returner programs and placing candidates in top UK companies. hackajob works with SME level enterprise organisations across the UK and is an unbiased and private tech marketplace with a mission to make the hiring process fairer, faster, and based on skills rather than backgrounds. So just moving on. Today, we will be discussing whether asking about career breaks should be a thing of the past when it comes to recruitment. So I'm Matt, Head of Talent here at Tech Returners. I've been in the recruitment industry now for about 16 years, always trying to hire engineers, never mind diverse engineers. I had the opportunity of joining Tech Returners back in September 2019, alongside Becky, who is one of our panelists today. So introducing our panelists, we have Becky, CEO, co-founder of Tech Returners, an advocate for creating accessible upskilling career opportunities for everyone in tech. Joined by Darren Ellicott, Head of Customer Success at hackajob. With a wealth of industry knowledge and expertise, he'll be sharing his experience of how enterprise organisations in the UK are approaching this subject. We're also joined by Hannah Yates, Resourcing Operation Lead at Autotrader, passionate about providing equal opportunities and eliminating the bias. And then finally, from the organisation side of things, Dean Fox, Talent Acquisition Lead at BT, and highly values strategically empowering the recruitment process and also eliminating stigma and bias. Then moving on, we have got Hushman Berman, soon to be a senior operations analyst at the UK Home Office. Hushman worked in the computer industry since he was 15 and was one of the first 200 individuals to gain the MSCE, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certification, which introduced him to Java, Cisco, and Visual Basic. He then gained valuable experience managing and maintaining websites in early e-commerce industry and progressed to work as a senior engineering manager at BT and Capgemini. In recent years, Husham has moved to Joix UK as a social responsibility manager before finding himself unemployed and taking a long career break with the pandemic hitting. Today, he has secured a new role and is proud of proving he can work as a part of a team on long-term projects, and it is excited for challenges to come. And then finally, we're joined by Shahana, who's a front-end developer at The Telegraph. Shahana began her career as a Java developer, but soon after her daughter was born, she quit the tech scene to be more hands-on mother. In 2020, after her daughter applied for a computing degree, Shahana felt inspired to return to the industry. After 20 years out of the workplace, she landed a job as a software engineer at The Telegraph, thanks to joining the Tech Returners Your Return to Tech programme. These two amazing individuals have kindly joined us to share the candidate perspective. They'll be sharing their own individual journeys and unique challenges faced based on recent experiences. So we're just going to move on to the agenda. So to make sure we get everything covered, the webinar is going to be split into 4 parts, around 15-20 minutes, which will focus on a particular theme when it comes to the topic of career breaks. So we'll be discussing why career breaks exist and how they're not going away. We'll also be looking at the perspective of UK businesses versus talent and what actionable steps can organisations implement in their own recruitment strategies to handle the career breaks? So moving on to section 1, without further ado, we'll jump straight into the first topic, painting the picture. And I'm going to be joined by Becky, Hannah, Dane and Darren. Hello everybody, thanks very much for joining us today. So we've got a variety of questions that we're just going to go through. It'd be really interesting to hear your perspective on these things. So to start off with, can you explain exactly what is a career break? Becky, maybe you'd like to take this one?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. As Matt mentioned, I am Becky. I am CEO and co-founder of an organisation called Tech Returners. We support people returning to technology after a career break and providing upskilling opportunities for them transitioning back into employment. The whole sort of vision around the organisation and the vision of Tech Returners came from my own experience. So my background is people, talent and HR, and I've been involved in that industry for the past 18 years, and the past 15 of those years been involved in tech, so scaling high growth tech businesses through the value of people. Just 9 years ago, I sat on a leadership team at an organisation in Manchester, and I fell pregnant with my son, Ethan, and had a short-term career break. And I think it was my first experience of understanding the challenges that people do face when having a career break, understanding that, things do move quickly. You're not as flexible to attend events that happen and tend to be, especially in the tech sector in the evenings, and having a young family, you can't necessarily go to those meetups, and really impacting confidence. So with the whole then transition back into it, it was sort of realised around, those challenges and obstacles people might face. So hence, obviously, the vision of Tech Returners. And now we work with hundreds of people that have had career breaks, and it can be a variety of things, in terms of, like I mentioned about childcare. Some of our returners have taken the decision to have a career break to raise their children and focus in terms of their early years, and then looking to return. It can be a career break, can be due to ill health. It can be due to caring responsibilities. We've had returners that wanted to take a break, and travel the world. Career breaks are different to different people. And I'm really excited to obviously be on this webinar today to talk about all of the advantages of having a career break. As being a mother of 2 and having 2 career breaks, I can definitely share some skills that I've gained along the way of my journey talking about career breaks.
Yeah, love it. And looking back at the event we were at with Hackajob not long ago, your presentation and your video, and bringing the kids along, showing the transferable skills that you develop having them was fantastic. So thanks for that, Becky. Moving on, why is it important we discuss the topic? Who would like to take that? Maybe Dane?
Yeah, because ultimately, until we have the conversation, we can't own our own biases around the subject. So like careers breaks can be taken by anybody, and there are mixed feelings about whether it's a good thing to have or it could be a strength, which we can talk about later on in this discussion. But yeah, I think everything starts with our own biases. I think if you ask everybody, are you biased? Most people would think they're less biased than any other people, but by having the conversation, it might open your eyes up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like we're saying about the transferable skills, it's important to discuss the topic. So we're removing that bias and looking at the skills that they can bring into the organisation.
And I think also, Matt, I think from what we've experienced, 2 years ago, we went into a pandemic. No one could predict in terms of what was going to happen. And, unfortunately, it's affected, people being made redundant, unfortunately, people being made furlough. And I think in terms of, I'm very much a person, I look at these things as opportunities, as a horrendous thing to happen. But, more and more people have now maybe had a career break themselves, and that's been enforced upon them, or know people in their family or friendship circles. And I think it's almost been able to have the ability to normalize a little bit of career breaks as well, because a lot more now people have experienced it. And I think it's created so much opportunity now for that discussion, hence obviously being on this webinar today about career breaks, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So what types of career breaks are there? I know you've touched on it briefly there, Becky, but are there any others that people have experienced when recruiting engineers into the business? I don't know, Hannah, have you come across any other types of career breaks?
Thanks, Matt, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. I think Becky touched on a few. Yeah, I definitely think family is like a really big one, and that doesn't just mean a woman. That could be a man, it could be anybody, but that caring responsibility in general. It could be people looking for work. At times, not currently in this market that I think we're going to come on to in a moment, but at times it can be really difficult to secure employment. So health, as people have mentioned, just like traveling, I think at the moment, oh my word, speaking to so many people, they're like, I was at home for 2 years. I planned to travel. I had money, I was ready. And it's okay, so I think we're going to see more of that. I think just personal choice, it can be hard, having your own life, working life and everything. And at times people might think, do you know what, this is my choice. This is a bit of me time. I need some reflection time. I think that another thing that I've seen is around, people who have been seeking asylum and then they're therefore not able to work. I do some work mentoring with refugees and mentors, and that would absolutely be a case there where people are unable to work during that stage. So I think there's so many reasons, tons.
Yeah, no, there really is. I mean, we do a lot of research into the career breaks and little things like just taking time out to do house projects and all of these different things, and coming back into the industry. Like if you've been traveling, you've got to plan, you've got not just you're traveling, where you're going, where you're staying, your money. So all of those are really valuable skills. Like I say, having children, you mediate, negotiate, project manage before 9 o'clock in the morning. Lots of skills that you're developing there. So I know that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Moving on to next question. Career breaks aside, what is the current landscape of the industry? And maybe Dean, Hannah, do you want to have a chat about that?
Do you want me to start? Because I've been pretty silent during it, so I'll start on this one. And I think I didn't want to interrupt on the last part. So I think the other one that's missed is education. A lot of people will take time off to educate themselves. They might want to focus on a particular area, and that's going to help them in their next career move. So I think that's a huge one as well. But I think in terms of the current landscape, what is missed a lot of time is the scarcity of this market right now. And I'm talking about scarcity overall. If you go into diverse areas, then it becomes even worse. But in certain tech markets, so DevOps being the one that's top of the agenda on my mind, there's 3 jobs for every candidate that's active in this market. So if you're looking at closing that off and saying, right, okay, we want this finished project or product, or we want this particular skill set or something like that, it's just going to make it really, really hard. So I think that overall, from a marketplace perspective, there needs to be a mentality shift, that we need to recognize that people will take career breaks for whatever reason. We've discussed a lot of them here. That doesn't mean that they aren't a great candidate for you. And obviously, when we get through to the other guys in this call, we'll be able to focus on their own moments in time. But there's one, because of what we do as a business and where our offices are, I find it fascinating. So we've got an office in Romania, and the laws in Romania is that when you have a child, you can take 2 years off, and that can't be disputed by your business. So that's a country law. If you look at in the UK, if you took 2 years off to have a child, a lot of time you'd almost be sidelined in this market. So I think that overall there needs to be a mentality shift to understand that people need to take off whatever time they need to in order to move on. It doesn't mean that they aren't ready for that next career move afterwards. Yeah,
no, absolutely. We meet so many different people with various different stories and different backgrounds. There's a lady actually on one of our programs at the moment, was a tech lead for 7 JavaScript engineers. She took 2 years out to start a family. Big deal, coming back in, handing over those responsibilities of caring to somebody else. Applied for tech lead, rejected. Applied for senior, rejected. Applied for mid-level, rejected. And applied for junior and rejected. When she applied to come onto the program, she listed her value at £20,000 because the industry had knocked her back. But she's now on a program and she's going to be returning as an engineer. And it's all because people didn't ask the question, what have you been doing over that time? And actually, if they'd have taken a look at a GitHub account, they'd have seen she'd been very busy, but they just didn't take the time to do that. So, but no, it's a really interesting point. And would anybody else like to add anything to following Darren?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And there's someone on the chat, Parimda, I hope I said your name correctly, talking about that on a career break, and it's that perception of a career break that people aren't doing anything, you know, but that's so untrue. You're not just sat there doing anything. This we're talking about that, how many certifications this person's done, and talking about even if you like when you're raising the children, like you mentioned, Matt, in terms of the real skills, the transferable skills that you gain upon. For me, having children, you know, it's taught me a wealth of skills in negotiation and mediation, just on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure a lot of parents who had to homeschool during the pandemic can relate in terms of we all became teachers as well. So that's a huge amount of wealth of skills. And I think it's that perception the industry needs to understand that, you know, just because somebody's had a career break, it's not that they haven't done anything. It's asking and finding out like what I have been doing and what then added value that then can contribute to, you know, your organization. So it's exploring it a little bit more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually takes us nicely on to the next subject, if nobody else has anything to add. Wonderful. So the business perspective, section 2. So now we have an understanding of the current landscape. It's time to discuss the business side of things. So just to start off with focusing on Hannah and Dane, if that's okay. How have organisations traditionally approached career breaks in the past? Yeah,
so for me, I see recruitment and recruiters as the gatekeepers to talent of all backgrounds. So in my experience, I've seen both good and I've seen bad practice, and it's our role as people within HR or recruitment to challenge that. So there have been a variety of different people that I've worked for where they've asked me to ask that question around career breaks and why they've had gaps in employment. And there is a debate of whether around they should put that on there or whether they should leave that off. Mm-hmm. And let that candidate speak for themselves when you meet with them. Whereas there's been others that have been in that situation and they've had babies or they've been traveling for the past 2 years and they have got the empathy, so that doesn't even come to their mind. Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And Hannah, how about yourself?
Yeah, just trying to think really. I think like if we think about traditionally and, you know, going back a bit, hopefully myself and Dana here, because maybe we are viewing things in a more positive way and progressive way. But I think if, you know, been in recruitment for a little bit, you know, started career in an agency, and I think really if I even like challenge myself and look back at potentially my own biases, I think it could have been, you know, viewed a bit with like a negative light, like, oh, okay, there's a career break and you'd be sort of, you know, trained or whatever or felt, even if it's trained, you felt it was your thing to go in and go, what have you been doing? But, you know, to just trying to like, well, what have you been doing? But really on like a surface level information, like, okay, you were doing that. And I think it was more to potentially even like select out than select in. And I think we've, Darren, you know, spoke about the market, and the market currently is, you know, there's a huge amount of vacancies out there across all sectors. You know, they're 50% up on pre-pandemic levels, and the workforce has shrunk by around 500,000 in light of Brexit and other people maybe reevaluating life with the pandemic. So I think we're in a market at the moment where, you know, we're not getting many applications in some of those roles. But I think if we go back a few years ago, other times, you could be overwhelmed, you know, with applications for some roles at points in time. And I think it can be thing of, okay, right, I just need to get these down. I need to get them down. So you're just trying to think of reasons to take people out of a process. And that isn't the right thing to do, you know, and we're going to come on to it. But I think that can be, like, I think historically where people have gone about it, they're just, okay, what are we doing at a top level? Okay, right, move on. Like, you know what I mean? I've got the information. I'm not going to then seek to understand, okay, well, you know, why was that? Like, why did you potentially choose that? What skills did you know, get in that time? What have you been doing tonight? Have you been doing anything whilst that? Yes or no, that's fine either way, because if you're taking time out for you might not want loads of side projects. That's okay. But I think it was just sort of I'm just going to get information, and potentially more of a selecting out depending on that market and that point in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had a conversation not so long ago, and one of the things around the career break was that they're not trusted. That was the actual reason, and I just think that's just unbelievable that people don't trust the reason for the career break.
And
go on, Becky.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry. And Hannah, I think, you know, I'm like you. I'll be totally open and honest. When I started my career out in like HR and talent, I had those biases, you know, and when I was reviewing CVs and saw career breaks and, you know, had that sort of perception around them. And I do think, you know, it's a massive education piece around it. I think one of the things that we're trying to do is, I've been, like I said, in HR talent for nearly 20 years, and it's moved on, the industry's moved on so much, but one thing that hasn't moved on is around the CV. So we're still judging people on an Arial 12 black and white document, which really doesn't give a holistic view of an actual individual. And what we're trying to do at Tech Returners is eliminate the CV. So, excuse me, you're eliminating, you know, where your biases naturally come in when you see dates and you see gaps, and actually just focusing on the skills of that individual, and actually give a whole overview of what value that person can provide. Because I think, you know, a bit like Dean said, in terms of your biases are automatically there. We have to be honest with that. And I think it's about finding ways in which we can reduce those biases and manage and control those biases to, you know, support people going forward as well. So I think it's also, you know, looking at tools. I know we're going to talk about tools and techniques later on, but how we can support people in organisations to help returners transition back into roles as well.
And I think alongside that, it's about educating the stakeholders you got in your own business, because I think that's sometimes the biggest gap in companies, that we are very lucky within our own talent spheres, let's say, of knowing all of the market insight and knowing the arguments we have against it. But I think I'm seeing this more in companies now than ever, and I think that comes. What I spend a lot of my life doing is consulting with companies about changes they need to make. And I think you are seeing that more in the market now than ever. But if you aren't educating your hiring managers, for all they know, there is a plethora of candidates out there, but everyone on this call knows that isn't the case. Like, we know that it's not like going to a buffet right now. You're spending a lot of money to get the right candidates. So I think it's about working with your stakeholders and explaining problems they're going to have, and explaining that purple squirrel that I like to call it, that they're looking for every time they set up a role isn't out there. But if they're going to take 3 months to find the right candidate, why not find someone that's got the acumen to learn the skill that you want them to be utilizing, or has the passion to move in this area? Like, I would rather within my own team bring in people that have passion to learn new skills than someone that's the finished article, because a finished article probably wants a different role anyway. So I think it's about looking at the gems that are out there that maybe aren't the perfect fit, but you can make them the perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And we here at Tech Returners, we partner with organisations, and we can get 200 applicants of people returning with career gaps. And we've enabled 138 people back into software engineering alone. And if organizations were educated like the partners, Auto Trader, we've worked with you before, successfully hired through, if you remove that bias, you can hire exceptional talent.
Yeah,
so,
and I you know, sort of have a little bit of a different view on that. I do feel there's a lot of candidates out there, and I think it's creating the right accessible opportunities for them. You know, when we first started Tech Returners, you know, one of our earlier programs, 2018, we worked with the BBC. We had 23,000 women apply for a program, right? And I get asked on a day-to-day basis, and the statement, there's not enough women in technology. There's absolutely an abundance, but what people are seeing is a lack of accessibility. Do you think that's now changed? Now we, you know, again, looking at the opportunities from the pandemic around the flexible working, it isn't seen as a benefit anymore. It's actually seen as the norm, and is creating more of those accessible opportunities. But I think if you, as a recruitment team, are asking yourself, you know, we don't have enough candidates, you know, we don't have enough diversity, have a look in terms of your infrastructure, your inclusivity of your organization. Are you actually portraying the right message to attract the candidates? Because like Matt said, we know there is a lot of people out there that are looking to return to work.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. Darren, why do some organizations need to understand the reason behind the career break? What are your thoughts?
So I think the one that sticks out to me is security clearance. I think security clearance is a really hard thing for companies to get around. I think companies need to be careful not to have security clearances. Someone said earlier about opting in and opting out. So I think it should be an opportunity for companies to say, right, okay, is there any reason this candidate couldn't work for us? Because it's very costly, both from a time perspective and from an overall price perspective, to bring a candidate through a process if they know they're not going to be able to hit the security clearance. So I think that's the reason that some companies utilize security clearance. Utilize asking about someone's background. And sometimes, like I think Hannah touched on it earlier, but sometimes it's general intrigue. So they want to understand what they've been doing in that time. And from a recruiter perspective, that's sometimes useful, because you can go to your stakeholders and say, okay, you're going to look at this CV, and Becky, obviously you're against CVs, but let's focus on CVs for a second. You can look at this CV and say, right, okay, I know there's a gap in here, but this is the reason there's the gap. If you don't have that and the CV is just on an ATS system like a workable or a greenhouse, and the hiring manager just sees that, they could decline that candidate. So I think the more knowledge you have about the reason, the more ammunition you'd have against the hiring manager. But I think, again, we'll go back to this several times in this topic, we need to look at a mentality shift. We need to look at how can we utilize this as a tool, not as a way to get people out of your process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything going on at BT or Auto Trader to kind of help line managers and recruiters kind of move away or ask the questions in the right way? Do you ask Hannah, Dean, and has there been any impact off the back of asking people? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, so I'm relatively new to BT, so there's the things I'm trying to put in place as we stand. However, from a past experience within healthcare recruitment or manufacturing, I've implemented diverse shortlisting, blind CVs, because like Becky, I'm not really 100% sold on CVs. It's a foot in the door at the end of the day. It's about that human interaction. How soon can we implement that into the process? As recruiters, we can actually take the brief from the manager, sift through the CVs for them, screen the candidates, and put forward people, and that'll be the first time they see them. I've actually done it before where the managers don't even see the CVs until after they've met them. And interestingly, I found that people from underrepresented backgrounds were 5 times more likely to be hired. I've actually had comments before, had I seen that CV, I probably would have said no to it, but they're everything that I need. Because it goes back to that whole concept of hire on attitude, fire on skills. Attitude and behaviors are everything. Equally as well, with one of the biggest pros of the pandemic and lockdown is that everyone's been forced to go to video and virtual. So being able to implement diverse interview panels with scorecards has been so much easier, because ultimately people want to connect with people that look like them or they can relate to them. That's a twofold process. So the more diverse the panel, the more likely you are to connect with a variety of different people. And that way you mitigate the risk of people hiring in their own image.
Yeah.
You have had excuses before, such as we haven't got enough diverse people to interview for this particular role. However, what I've been able to educate certain businesses that I've worked with is they don't need to be a nurse. They don't need to be a researcher in digital design or whatever it might be. They just need to be a person sat there to share their thoughts on that profile, and at least we have one person that knows what they're looking for in terms of skill set, but the other panel can then assess on the other competencies that you put into place.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Thank you for that. Hannah, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think, yes, building on, you know, some of those points. I think it's like there's a few different things that we do and tried, and some things you've tried and you think, I wasn't as effective as I potentially hoped. You know, it's about being open, and I can see, you know, people commenting and things in the chat, and I think around those stakeholders and those hiring managers, yeah, you know, we're recruiters, and, you know, I've got a team and part of a team, and, you know, we really bought into, you know, diversity and inclusion, and we do a lot. I've literally just come off hosting a one-day D&I session that all our new starters go on in the middle of the day. So it's ingrained in our culture, but as a team, but you do need to make sure that it's there for your hiring managers and your wider stakeholders. There's obviously so many ways that you can do that. I think one of the key ways that we have success with is, you know, there's a day's training that all hiring managers or just interviewers, because as Dane said, you know what I mean? You bring other people into that experience, because you don't just want to meet one person as a candidate, because that is not a true view. And also that is not diversity of thought in any way. So you're not going to get to a great outcome. So you need to bring different people in at different stages. So we do, you know, training, and in that there is, it's practical. Like, we do role plays, very uncomfortable at times, but, you know, like, what will you do for that? How are you going to shortlist that? And I think it's really trying to work to, at times, like an evidence-based recruitment approach. I know there is discussions around the CV, and I absolutely, like, I do understand that, because I think it can really be a barrier to people. But, you know, at times that might, you know, you are going to utilize those, and in interviews too, I think, to try and have an evidence base, like up front, be like, what are we looking for, like in those conversations, like up front, like what are those key skills, having, you know, to and fro, and as Darren said, sharing the market intel, you know, to go, that's too big, that's too many, like, you're closing doors here, getting on LinkedIn and saying that doesn't exist. If we go down that route, that talent pool's going like this, you know. If let's really educate and work in partnership with people, and, you know, do training, but then equally work as a partnership as you go through. Okay, we might do some shortlisting, and then it's over to them. The way that we do it is every application is reviewed independently and scored by 2 people. Then come together, and we see that. We then have a call and go, okay, we've got some different opinions here. Let's get back together. Here's what we started with. Here's what we agreed. This is what we're looking for. Let's try and have some conversations. And I think if we move to, like, worlds of, like, just like automate, like fully automation, just pushing people through, and like ATS can be brilliant tools, but we need to have conversations. We need to have interventions and call things out. Like, why was that? Why did you think that was a 2 when you thought that was a that? And it's often, oh, well, there's something else there. Like, that wasn't actually written that well there. I'm like, we're not evaluating that. That's not the skill that we're looking for in this piece. So I think it's just chatting and like being open to challenge. You be challenged, challenge them. But yeah, there's so many things that you can do, but you're a part of that piece, but you cannot do everything. And equally, you can push and push as a TA team, talent team, but people are going to land in a role. And if you push that too hard, and that there wasn't that buy-in, and there wasn't that understanding of value and things like that, what's that individual's journey going to be like in role? Because I think that's just one part, isn't it? Getting people into a business, but making sure that they feel included, valued, and are going to be retained is like a different thing. So I think, yeah, hiring managers and stakeholders is just so important.
Absolutely. We've always loved your interview process here at Tech.
And I think we're slightly blessed in the tech market, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at repositories, great place to look at what someone's doing. Look at someone's personal projects. Like, it's the most obvious place to look. It's a digital CV of what they've done. You certainly don't have that. You can't go to a salesperson and say, "Show me your sales," because they don't do it in their own personal times. Developers are so passionate about what they do, so you should take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's something so simple, isn't it, Darren? But
Exactly.
there's organisations that don't do it. You know,
Yeah.
it's still following that very traditional outlook on in terms of interview, and like if it doesn't fit in the box, it's not black and white. And I think again, I think a lot of people have said it's about educating those stakeholders. And I do understand that if maybe you may not have had experienced a career break or been surrounded by it, there is obviously, again, not that lack of understanding. So I think be curious, ask those questions, you know, if anything out of this webinar, you know, maybe it's something you might need to understand a little bit further. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, you know, reach out, because it's okay not to know everything. We're all learning, we're all developing as we go through. And if you've not experienced it, just ask and understand. And hopefully, as we move on to our returners, and I'm sure we'll get to those, you know, you understand a little bit more about the value that returners bring to an organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving this conversation, but I'm very conscious we have got two wonderful returners here on our call. So I think we'll move on to the candidate's perspective. So we're now going to hear directly from Husham and Shahana all about their own experience when applying for jobs and successfully securing a new role. So thank you both so much for joining us today. To start off with, could you just share your story? What's your background? What made you want or need you to return back to work? And Shahana, can we start with yourself?
Yeah, hi, it's amazing to see so many people on the call, and thanks for the opportunity as well speaking. So I started tinkering with computers probably when I was about 12, 13 years old. I did my GCSEs and my A-levels and my degree in IT. And I thought that I was going to have a career in IT, and that's what I intended to do. After graduating, I started off as a Java developer, but then I had my first child, and this is back in 2001. The technical landscape was moving very fast at the time. My gap ended up being, I think, about 4 years with my first two kids, and you know, I just felt very out of place. I felt that things had moved on so much that my technical ability was really behind. It affects your confidence, but also your technical ability doesn't match. As a new graduate, my technical ability wasn't matching what was out there. It was a very back-end landscape as well. So FE roles weren't necessarily out there, and it was quite different. I think the lack of confidence at that time kind of made me step back a bit. It wasn't that I didn't love it anymore. I had always loved IT. I'd always loved coding, but family life was changing, and so I adapted to that. And I started doing part-time jobs in other things, some project management, community work. I'm actually a mum of 5, so that career gap got bigger and bigger. And I kind of just put it on the back burner, you know, and I thought that it's been so long, I can't go back to it. The conversations would be in our house though, because my husband's also in IT, so I could see his career kind of moving on. There was that little bit of underlying kind of jealousy, I'm kind of missing out on something, but it was something that I just kind of learned to accept. And then fast forward to about 2020, I think it was, or 2019, and my eldest now, who was 19 at the time, was applying to uni. We had always encouraged them to look into IT, and none of them listened. And then at that point, she kind of started to realize that it might be for her. And it was just that conversation that was going on in the house that kind of reignited for me that love that I'd always hadn't really lost. But I was still very, very conscious of the fact that it would be almost impossible for me. So I didn't actually tell anyone, and I just started on YouTube with a Python course and started to learn. I was fully kind of aware of how hard it would be, and I actually thought that there isn't absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to do this. But once I started coding and that kind of started coming back to me, I realized that I could, and that I think is the thing that kind of pushes you forward. I was learning by myself about the next year, Python, data analysis, data science. I got a small role as a data analyst, but you know, like you're hearing, there is a stigma of having a massive career break. When I was applying for jobs, I got no responses. I think it must have been 40 applications that I put in, and then Tech Returners came along. And the fit for me was absolutely perfect, because they were, going to upskill and, introduce you, back into that technical environment. And for me, it was such a big career break. It was, really vital. I loved being on the course because it got me back into that environment that I loved. It got me back into coding, but in a supportive environment. The tech leads that we had on the course were always very helpful. And then we applied to jobs, and I'm now working as a front-end developer at the Telegraph. So I do the website work. So when things change on the website, that's our team.
Yay!
Excellent. Yeah. It's absolutely excellent being back in. I still pinch myself every time I walk into Victoria. And I think I'm very blessed and very lucky to be in that role, and I enjoy every minute of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing having you on the programme. You did absolutely wonderful. I remember calling you to let you know about the offer, and that will stay in my memory for a very long time.
Mine too.
But yeah, congratulations. And Hashim, do you want to talk us through your experience in your journey?
Hi, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Well, to be honest, I worked as I worked since I was a teenager. I've been working in the IT industry ever since then. Since 15, in fact. I worked. Then I moved on to corporations for Capgemini and British Telecom. For the longest time, I've been working for them for a very long time, and continued on working with them, developing my skills within the corporations as well. I enjoyed the world of computers. I love anything that you can type anything with it, so it was really cool. I made an effort to learn all the languages within the world of computers, from Java, Basic, Visual Basics, Cisco, and Microsoft, and moved on. Which it enabled me to move on comfortably within the entire, entire skill levels of IT. It was really, really exciting. And while I was with BT, I started the problem and change management. Felt it was a great fit at the time, and it enabled me to get more skills within the management, problem and change management, changes and change within the organization, to move on to bigger management roles within BT. It enabled me to move on to more management IT roles. I started new roles as also team leaders. I felt it was a great fit at the time, as it was no longer just looking at the manager. I was now the manager. I was the man. But in essence, it was now the, trying to actually, this change in my career made me move on and make me more active role in the future decisions and where I should move on to next. I finished I moved on to companies such as Attenda, then I moved on to companies such as Droidbox and so on. I'm then kind of moved on, all was team leading and moving on management roles. It was very exciting, but at a certain point I decided, you know what, I want to just have time for myself. I realized that all this time from when I was a teenager, I've been working non-stop, and all I cared about was work. I left my family, I left everything. I decided just to take a small break. In November 2019, I decided to take a holiday. 2 months holiday. I said, that's all I want. 2 months holiday. I took it November 2019. And when I came back, I hit the Corona time. It was pandemic. It was no work. I couldn't actually find work. There was no way I can actually do any work. It was horrible. It was trying to actually get back to corporations when they're all working from home is basically it's a non-starter for me. It's trying to send CVs. It's not going to be companies wouldn't actually wasn't even looking, because they were all getting all their staff at home. So there's no point trying to get new staff to work from home. There's no point there. The current staff would be fine. So trying to actually do more skills, develop more skills, to continue on developing within the skills, but was all doing it from home. Had to continue doing the IT role, trying to actually do something. it took me a long time to wait for the Corona time to finish, where, you know, that pandemic time, well, I know we're still not finished 100%, but it at least now corporations are hiring again, everything. Trying to actually reapply was almost, I'll say it, you know, nightmarish, because how do you explain to corporations that I've been away from work for 2 years? Because it from end of 2020 to 2022, when corporations started to hire again, how do you explain that? It's kind of like a non-starter. I mean, I never felt so unrelaxed, so uneasy trying to actually explain to them that, hey, you know what, I've been off work for just holiday. I can't even say that. I can't even say that. Doesn't even compute in my brain. I've been working all my life. It's not very easy. Then I you know, I had to rethink this. I had to get more confidence. It took me a while to get more confidence, to write a CV again, and maybe to reestablish myself without the need to I don't know how to say this, without the being uneasy. And you know, I'm lucky that I managed to get interviews again, and so I'm lucky that I managed to get you know, into a job, and now I'm in line for a good job as a senior operation manager. So, you know, that's gonna be, no, analyst, sorry. and it's gonna be an amazing role that I'm thinking, but it did feel very hard to actually try to do an interview again, to do the how do you feel? It's the whole feeling of trying to get back to a world of corporations without trying to lie to them. Hey, you know what? I've been away for work, but just staying at home doing nothing, watching Netflix. It was really great.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned some of the challenges there. Shahana, what kind of, you mentioned you were applying to kind of like 40 other organizations. Did you get any feedback? What were the challenges that you were facing?
I think that when you're applying and you've had a break for a long time, like one thing that's been picked up on is CV, that you are not quite sure about how to get your CV done. So I think I got mine done professionally at one point, hoping that would help. That didn't really help either. But also padding out your CV and trying to explain, you know, what you've been doing. Like for me, I think it's very different because my career gap in IT was so large. I was trying to make any learning that I had done tangible, whereas in the back of your mind, your confidence is telling you, a lack of confidence is telling you that's not actually tangible experience. So you're caught in this cycle of kind of negative mindset, but also trying to push forward, and that's quite hard. And I think that, you know, when you've had other life experiences, you do have a different type of confidence in your skills and in your ability, but a CV does not present that to people. So people are just seeing your CV, they're seeing that you might have been, for me anyway, working part-time, doing different things, but they don't see the you know, potential that is in your skills, all the soft skills that you bring, or the, you know, the other side of your personality, how you fit, how you'll fit into a job, and how hard you'll try. I think, you know, one thing that we always talked about on tech returners were that the people that were on returning, they will fight twice as hard to get that job, because there's a motivation behind what they're doing, and that just doesn't come across on a CV. But tech returners, because of the course and the way that it was, we were able to show people who we were and what our potential was and how hard we were prepared to work. And I think that was the, you know, the thing that kind of helped to give us that little bit of an edge compared to applying normally.
Yeah, well, thank you for that feedback. The team will be very happy to hear. How did it come up? Did the career break come up in the recruitment process with the Telegraph?
It doesn't actually. I think that once I was in, there was no difference between me and other people, and I felt that I needed to, at the beginning, explain myself, because obviously my technical ability would be behind other people. But then I think, again, that is our confidence and our lack of confidence in our own abilities. My manager was excellent. He would constantly be, reassuring me. And I think when that came to like one of my reviews, he said to me, there's no reason for your lack of confidence, because you're doing everything that you should be doing, for your level and your stage. So I think that, for me, I bring up the career break because I see it for the Telegraph as a potential to get other people in. I'm constantly talking about this, and I wrote an article on Medium recently as well about the fact that companies need to broaden the way that they're looking, in the same way that they will give some leeway to graduates and train them and give them that kind of program. And I think even for the Telegraph, when they took me on, they weren't necessarily sure where I would fit and how they would be able to manage me. But I'm always telling them that, look, you have managed me, therefore you can do it, and you should take more people on, because, as we've seen, people that have a career break, they need a program similar to a graduate program. Some people need it less because their career has been longer and they've stepped out for a bit and it's easier for them to step back in. But some people need more help. And I think that once companies do that and allow that, inroad in, they'll realize the potential of people that are more mature and have experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Amazing, thank you very much. I'd love to continue this section because I think it's brilliant. I can see from the chat we've got a lot of people looking to return who hopefully will be taking a lot of reassurance and benefit from both of your stories. So Husham, congratulations on your new role, and welcome back to technology as well, Shahana. So we're just going to move on now to our final section, which is positive action and solutions. So it's been great to hear from both the returners and the business's perspective. Now, most organisations do want to change and move away from old school screening, as Hannah has mentioned there, in order to make the process fairer and more inclusive. So it's now time to take a look at how organisations can handle career breaks moving forward. So do we think about asking for career breaks as a thing of the past? Who wants to take that one? Becky?
Yeah, sorry, Hannah. I think it's around normalizing it. I think not making, leading with a question, I see you've had a career break, talk to me a little bit about that. It's almost like just asking a person just to talk about their skills and their experiences without highlighting it. I think one of the biggest things we get asked at Tech Returners is, how do I sort of demonstrate and how do I sort of list my career break on like CV or on our returner profiles? And it's almost like, well, what have you done? We've had some amazing people in the chat talk about like doing AWS certifications, doing volunteering, etc. Well, that's what you talk about. You talk about the things that you've done, and normalizing the fact of those skills and those experiences that you've had, and talking about it as a positive. Like I said right at the beginning, it's not that you've not done anything. There's so wealth of experience, and I think, touching upon what Shahana said, it's that confidence I think that's like one of the biggest barriers around. We do a session at Tech Returners talking about reframing your career break, and your automatic sort of initial perception is like, my career break was a bad thing. Talked about then around how do I actually talk about, I've took a holiday and now I'm not in work. We'll talk about it actually and reframe it, and talking about it as a positive about why I wanted to do that and what skills and experiences that has given me to then transfer back into a role within an organization. And I think it's having the confidence to do that, but also from an employee's perspective, create a psychological safe culture that someone feels comfortable sharing that experience from the other side, rather than, framing it, oh, what have you done in your career break? Talk to me a little bit about, your skills and experience, how have you gained those, and just by reframing in terms of how you ask that question can give people that sort of green light to open up and actually reframe their career break in a positive. And what we experience, Matt, all the time, sometimes we speak to returners and they go, well, we haven't really done anything. And I think, what was it? A lady that has just gone to work for Holiday Extras. She was graduated at Mentor and things like that. And she hadn't even actually talked about it on any of her application, etc. But by creating that safe space, she opened up about all these amazing things that you had. And I think it's about creating that culture, I think inclusivity around giving people that confidence to share and be vulnerable.
Yeah, no, 100%, absolutely. And Hannah, did you want to add to that as well?
No, I think Becky has summarised that beautifully. I don't think it should be a thing of the past asking about career breaks, because as Becky's highlighted, oh my God, there's so many stories to tell and so much positivity to share and so much strength to bring to the front. So I think not asking about it, and until it's become normalized, maybe we'll get to a place where maybe people don't feel like the need to ask about it. I think not asking about it could actually be, I'm not going to talk about it, and then people are going to make their own assumptions on something. But hopefully asking about it with negative potentially intent, not in the right way. Hopefully that's really going to be becoming a thing of the past. But normalizing career breaks, really sharing the positivity, celebrating the strengths that people can bring. Hopefully that will be a thing of the now and the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Dean, just a question for yourself. Do you have any kind of suggestions how to explain different career types, career breaks in CVs, as well as in interviews? How would you, what would you recommend people do from that perspective?
Yeah, so for me, with any sort of stigmas or any potential bias, own it. It's about how you frame it. And it can be both positive or solution focused. I'm not going to use the word negative. So for me, I'm a massive people person. I think we all are at our core. And sometimes what separates one person from another, or what makes me buy into somebody over another person, is their story.
Mm-hmm.
In England, we love an underdog story, don't we? So you could utilize this to your strength. And from my experience, and I've heard of a few people recently with career breaks, there's so much gratitude, and they've come back refreshed and motivated. And because you've given them that opportunity, they come at it with 200-300% more energy than somebody that's been there and done it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually speaking with a lady today. She's going through our process for the On the Beach programme, and so there's a take-home tech task as a part of the programme. It's a really safe space. They get 3 days to do it, and all of these wonderful things. And it came back as a fail, and I just thought, this is bizarre. What's happened? So reached out. Tested positive for COVID, really poorly, really unwell. And I was speaking to her and she was like, Matt, I'm so determined, please let me do it again. She was like, I'm gonna pass it. And it's just that determination. You've really got to open your eyes when looking at applications of what can this person do. So thank you for sharing that, Dean. Moving on then, what can organisations do to maintain equality post-recruitment? Does anybody want to take that?
Yeah, so for me, organizations not only need to hire diverse talent, for me, that should be the norm. It's about making people feel like they belong. So you're cultivating communities, sharing stories, allowing people to bring their true authentic selves to the office, not putting everybody into a mold. Just let people have their wings, let them fly, and they'll blossom, and they'll give you a lot more than what you probably prescribed in the first instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. And then finally, what is Tech Returners' approach to career breaks, Becky, and how can you help organisations make a difference?
I think I see it from two perspectives. So from all these amazing people. And I've got to say thank you, just coming on a webinar and then posting in the chat around you've had a career break and being vulnerable. That's not easy to do. I've been in that experience, and I know people have been really vulnerable in the chat, and just be so proud of yourselves, A, for coming onto the webinar, and B, for putting yourself out there. Like I said in the chat, if anyone just wants to chat, just wants to connect, I'm more than happy to do so, because I understand how it feels. And I think we've talked about not really as much as I'd probably like to talk about that confidence element as well. I popped a link on it about a talk. We're a great believer of the power of the growth mindset. Amazing work from a lady called Carol Dweck. If you've not heard of her, please do, and go and Google her. And it's all about someone put in the chat around the biggest barrier is your own mindset, and it truly is. We can talk here about talking about the skills, the experiences, going and really sharing that. But if your mindset is telling you in terms of, that you don't have the confidence to do this, you feel like a bit of a failure, you don't have those skills and experiences, which you definitely have, that's something that, we can support with. We do a lot of amazing courses, resources, etc. So please do reach out. So we sort of tackle it from both ways, obviously supporting amazing talent, people like Shana in terms of going through our program, 50-50 on technical upskill, and then personal career mindset management is really a focus on us. And then partnering with organizations that want to change, and I think that's really important to say, that they come to us and they say, well, we're interested in being more inclusive and being more diverse. How can we support them as an organization and a journey going there? And I think that is a really important thing. It is a journey, and I'm sure Hannah indeed will talk about it. Not one day you're an organization that isn't diverse and inclusive, next day you are. It's sort of like a journey going through different milestones. So if people are from organizations on there, I think one of the workshops I've done in the past is almost, creating it as a roadmap, thinking about why you're doing it and those milestones in terms of which you're wanting to achieve. Be curious, ask the questions. It might, returners and career breaks might be something as an organization that you've not come across and you might not know about. Well, there's amazing people in the network, the people that are on the panel here, reach out to them, ask for a bit more understanding on them. It's okay not to know the answers. There's people out there that can help them. I think it's a fantastic community. I'm in quite a few of the talent communities that happen, and everyone's just so willing to share. So please do reach out. So I think seeing it from two different perspectives, what support we can give returners and what support we can give organizations as well. And we always say, there's people on there that, might not want to do our program or might not be relevant, but we'll still offer signposting support wherever we can. That's why I'm quite open in giving my details. I understand what it's like having a career break and transitioning back. I've done it twice. And different experiences, different times. So if you just needed a chat, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Becky. And I believe kind of profiles have been shared as a part of the invitation to the event. So we're coming to the end now. It's been a fantastic chat and conversation. So thank you very much, everybody. Is there anything else anyone would like to share before we move on to the Q&A? No, all good. Fantastic. So we've had some fantastic questions coming through, and some have been answered. Quite an interesting one here for yourself, Shahana. What advice would you give anyone taking a career break, thinking of taking a career break?
I think it depends on everyone's circumstances are different. That's what usually fuels why you take a career break. I think it's always important to not let go of your goals. I think that's what I learned on my journey, because I knew that IT was my real love. I did lots of other things in between. I tried to, kind of fill that gap, kind of balance, because obviously I had a family and I wanted to do something that I enjoyed, trying to fill that gap. But I think you should always try and follow your passion. If you're passionate about something, there is some luck involved and there's some help involved. But if your passion is at the base of something, I know that when I walk into work every day, I don't think there's ever a day, even if I'm tired, that I don't want to be there, because your passion is what's fueling you and you enjoy being there. And that's what propels you. It makes it easier to learn. It makes you inquisitive. It makes you pleasant to be around, because that's the vibe that you give to people. So I don't think there's ever anything wrong with taking a career break, but don't lose focus of the person that you are and what you really want to do. And listen out. I mean, the conversations were always there in our house, because my husband's still in IT and the interest was still there. Just because you're not doing that particular thing, don't lose that consciousness of that conversation, because that also helps you when you step back in, that, you remember those terminology or things around that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Shahana. And then Darren, just coming over to yourself, what are some of the best practices you've seen where hackajob client have successfully hired candidates who had temporarily left the workforce?
So I'll touch on a program that one of the clients uses. It's actually more focused on people that had gone down a different career path and then hadn't been able to find a way back into it. So one of the businesses we work with, an e-commerce business, but they have a lot of people that are in call centers. So when they actually did a study on the candidates that they had in these call centers, I think it was 17 to 20%, I can't remember the exact number, of them actually had a degree that could be utilized in their head office, a lot of them actually in tech. So what they did is they had a program where anyone could apply, and they had thousands of people apply because of how many call centers they have. And they said, right, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take you in a 16-week program. During that 16 weeks, we'll give you the opportunity to train you up in this tech. At the end of it, we've got X number of places left, and that's the people we'll take forward. So I think that what I loved about that program was, yes, they had a limited amount of spaces, but they created opportunities for these people that they could then go into a different route or could go to a different organization. So yeah, that's probably one of the big ones that I always point to when I look at programs of what companies are doing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that was a great question from whoever asked that one. And then I think finally, due to time, so to anyone, am I unlikely to get a higher salary after a career break? And I know Tech Returners have got some data on this, Becky, so do you maybe want to start and we'll see what everybody else thinks?
Oh, please, hopefully Kerry, our operations manager's not watching on the call and make sure I get the right figure. But we did a piece of research back in 2018 with Manchester Business School, and it was reported that on average, women returning to work get on average 5k less per annum on their salary. Well, it was obviously, anybody who knows me sets me a challenge, and we wanted to change that. And we report on average returners going through our program and transitioning back into roles get on average £13,000 more per annum from when they left to when they returned. So I'm really pleased with that, because I think it goes and supports everything we talk about around those added value skills, the real skills, transferable skills, however you want to name them, that people gain on their career breaks and add that added value when they're actually returning to a career. So I think it's a statistic that we're very, very proud of at Tech Returners.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Becky. We had actually a question come in earlier from Hernando. I had a break from 10 years plus in engineering and project management to go into web development, where I've recently become a full stack web developer, but struggling to break into it. Any advice? Anybody want to take that?
Yeah.
Shahana?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Oh.
Becky, go ahead.
No, go on. You were before me.
No, I mean, my experience is a lot less, but I think that when you're going back in after a 10-year break, it's important to try and upskill and talk to as many people as possible. And because when you're away for a long time, things change. and that itself, taking that step back, it's harder. So like for me, for example, I try and ask as many questions as I can. I think there's also a stigma around that, because you feel that, oh, people are not going to, they're going to know that I don't know as much. I ask questions all the time. I ask everyone and anyone. If I don't understand anything, I think I'm known for it in our team now. If I don't understand something, I ask, and that's the only way that you learn. And there's a lot of good kind of newsletters and that you can subscribe to as well, to see what the latest things are, what people are talking about. The other thing is that there's a lot out there. So when you go back and you think that, oh, that I have to learn this, and this, it's impossible. So you learn that most engineers, actually, if you ask them questions, they know about their own niche, and you drop a phrase in that it hasn't come into their remit, they don't know what it's about. So you don't have to know everything. Know enough to get yourself started, and then build on that. Find the things that interest you. Not everybody enjoys everything. Not everyone will want to do app development. They might want to do, front end, or they might have an interest in back end. So find what you enjoy, and then focus on that, and ask questions. Ask the people around you, what are they learning? What are they doing? And if they give you training days, use them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Becky, did you want to add to that?
Oh, it was an amazing answer, and I'd probably just reiterate that the fact about the community. If you go on places like meetup.com, Eventbrite, there's always meetups going on, and that now becoming more accessible, are now virtual, hybrid, etc. So go out, broaden, be curious, like Shanna said, in terms of like, go out. If you might have heard something, I'm a great one, you hear something on a tweet or a post, and then you go, well, find out a little bit more about that, and then whether that's something that you want to pursue going forward. LinkedIn, it's a fantastic tool, and everybody, I've got to say, if anybody gets asked about advice or support, that's a really nice feeling. So don't be afraid to ask for, connect with people, or put a post out there, etc. Connecting with people that through your network, because you will definitely find people wanting to help you. We like to be asked and to support people. Yeah,
absolutely. We have a motto here that there is no silly questions, because I think that it might be important to you and somebody else. So just always ask questions that are important to help you out. Hannah, while it may take some time to destigmatize career breaks, if I can pronounce that correctly, what are the positive actions companies take to help normalize the idea of taking a career break?
Okay, I think there's probably a few things. Some are probably like bigger things, and some are quick wins. I think probably, like, first of all, find out, is there anybody in your, I am thinking off the top of my head, if there's anyone in your business, like, have they had like a career break? Is there anybody who just was like, even if it's it might be, it is different, but maternity leave, that can be still like really challenging. I'm not speaking from personal experience, I'm speaking from my colleagues and close friends. So that could be an example of how we support people, coming back, and the skills that they gained whilst being off. But there might be other people that have had career breaks in the business. So I think, start with that, share some stories, maybe post some questions. If you got Slack, have you got other networks, ask them to do a coffee chat on it, like pull from other groups, and get them just to start opening to conversations. Find out if you can. I think a good way to destigmatize is to tell stories, and then could you work with tech returners? We work with tech returners obviously as a business, and we've hired 7 fantastic people over just over a 2-year period, one just as lockdown started, so that was really, really fun. And they're doing the work, like they're all here. They've been promoted. They are working extremely hard, and they, people do make comments like, just need to buy more tech returners, let's not hire as many grads this year. Work harder, things like that, the less effort. That's a generalization, but people do say those things, so they can do it for you. And I think but then in regards to other things, I think it's just having conversations. If you're not going to be able to just catch it all at one time. You know, if you are sending a CV over and people are, you know, coming back and thinking, oh, I thought they would have got through, it's probably maybe they've got a career break, ask that question. I think there's probably loads of things that you can do, but share positive stories, showcase the value, and just open up the question to try and get people talking and finding out, actually, do people have negative connotations in business, and let's start trying to have those uncomfortable conversations around it to shift it. There, some quick ideas. There's probably thought of a greater ones out there too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Hannah. And Darren, what's your thoughts on that?
Can I be boring and say that Hannah did a really, really good job of explaining that? I don't know how much I'll be able to add on top of that, unfortunately.
That is absolutely fine. That was a sterling answer, Hannah. So thank you very much. Dane, one for yourself. Where is the best place to begin when educating stakeholders around career breaks?
At the recruitment brief. So it's one of the questions: would you consider part-time workers, and would you consider people that have been out of work for a couple of years? And then it's just interesting to see what comes back. It's all about understanding, and then you can have that conversation about the benefits.
Yeah. How would what would your approach be? So say I'm a hiring manager and I say, no, I'm not interested with anyone that's had a career break. What would be your approach to kind of handling that?
It starts with why. So why wouldn't you take somebody that's had a career break? What do you think is going to be the difference over the past year or two, as opposed to somebody that's not been out of work? And then just sort of deep dive into that. Like, for instance, COVID, I think it was 2019, the end of 2019, in the blink of an eye, those 2 or 3 years have gone.
Yeah.
Really, like, I know there's going to be a gap, like, especially within the tech market, that's evolved leaps and bounds. But once your brain learns a certain type of language, it's a bit like, I hate to say it, it sounds really cheesy, it's like learning to drive a bike, ride a bike, or drive a car. As soon as you're back in that saddle, it comes back to you, and you've got a lot more capability to absorb information than somebody that's starting it from fresh.
Yeah, fantastic.
I love the why question as well. That's my favorite question for everything. When you ask why 3 or 4 times, usually someone will talk themselves out of where they started, and I think that's so important, because we kind of started with this, but we all have our own biases. If you keep asking why, people will start figuring out, wait, I had a bias on this. That when I actually look at this with the full concept of everything I should, then I don't actually believe this. This is just where I started my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. One technique that I used to have was say, that's a really interesting comment, or that's a really interesting piece of paper. Just talk to me about your thought process around that. And you'll notice that when they get, you're almost like reverse coaching them, and then they've got to answer it back to you, and it's almost that they go very hesitant, going, actually, well, why? And then they go, oh, and then it's just biases, and it's like, okay, well, what can we do to sort of for me to show you the value, or think, and help them reach that solution as well?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you both. Husham, was it challenging to speak to larger corporations again after a career break?
Well, it wasn't actually, the challenge wasn't talking to the corporation, thinking that, okay, the corporation is the big bad wolf. It was more like I was not confident enough to try to actually get the courage to speak to corporation. I had to develop a whole new concept of how I can talk to them. But the thing is, I think trying to actually get back on it, trying to actually just sending out the CVs, trying to talk to people, trying to talk to people, to others in the corporation. It felt more normal. It made me more normalize myself, made me settle within the back into the realm where I was, and it felt more at ease as it developed back, with more interviews and more CV sending and everything else.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. We've got one here. With any break, there will be a skill fade. I've taken about 3 years off, and I find that getting back into the mindset appears to be the biggest challenge. There are reasons behind this, but are there any hints, tips, experience about the best route to get on track? Maybe Becky and then Shahana, or Shahana then Becky. What do you think?
Shahana, you've got obviously recent experience there.
Yeah, I know for me, when I was transitioning back into that environment, I set my day up as a work day. So I would drop the kids off at school and I'd give myself 5 hours and I would treat it as if I was working. And because you need to change the mindset. If you've had a break or you've been doing something different, you have to train your mindset to be that this is working time now. So whether it's studying or actual work, shift your day so that you're already preparing. And also, like, for people that are going back after caring into a working environment, you're not just preparing yourself, you have to prepare your family, because their environment is going to shift as well. So I would start that preparation early.
Yeah, fantastic. And Becky, I know we do things on kind of confidence and imposter syndrome. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I think such a simple tip and technique you could do straight away is, sometimes when you get put on the spot and talk about like what have you done on your career break or what skills, etc., it's really hard to just automatically think that. Start to like journal. So at the end of each day, you can sort of think about things that you've achieved that day, and there might be the smallest things to the largest things. From a looking after children's perspective, you're talking about you just helped and supported them and made them survive for another day. But you're talking about that list, and then you're starting to build up that reflection, and it's all about muscle memory. So our brains are like muscles. So the more then obviously we start to think in that more positive mentality of what I've achieved, what I've done well, your brain will then start to get used to it more, actually focusing on that. Whereas if you go from one extreme to the other, it's just about that gradual process. And when you're in the moment of caring or looking after children, and you really are reflecting about the things that you've learned, or people, like Sharon said, in terms of you've set your day up, you might have then done looked at one YouTube video or done a Udemy course, or commented on a blog or read an article, then you can write that down and you start building that reflection log about the skills and experience that you've got, that then you can then build into more when you talk about it in interviews, etc.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you there, Becky. Good advice. For some people, their career gap is sensitive and a personal subject. Should recruiters focus more on the candidate's skills and less on their background? Maybe not asking about the reason behind the career gap would be better. What are your thoughts?
I think I completely understand where candidates coming from. There's going to be some reasons you just don't want to talk about, and I think this comes back to the fact that there needs to be a mindset within the market that we need to have some comfortability that you can say at a top line what the reason that you took time off with. But I think there's also a fear within candidates that I don't want to be sidelined because of this. So I think recruiters need to have a bit of EQ about what they're doing. But at the same time, candidates need to have the trust and the confidence that they can have a conversation with a recruiter about what would happen, and it's not going to lead backwards. So think about it like a doctor. You would tell a doctor something because you have the trust that whatever you tell them will be held in the best regard and they won't use it against you. So think of a recruiter as a doctor, and hopefully the recruiter is going to help you with the symptoms you've got and the problems you're facing, which have stopped you from getting back into the workplace.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Don, and it's a really interesting question. Because I think, I'm making an assumption, but like when I've seen that comment, you might think of, okay, an example of that could be mental health. You've had a period off for that reason, and unfortunately there is still stigma. There is discrimination around disability and long-term health conditions and things like that. But I think so I can really understand a candidate's viewpoint and hesitation around that. I would really encourage, potentially, as Dan said, try and dip in maybe to give that high level, and if you want to obviously go back into work, and that's why you're applying for a role, and therefore what's really important is that you land in a business that's going to support you, because if that recruiter or person that you spoke to isn't handling that with like grace, sensitivity, and understand and ask questions. Okay, thinking about the recruitment process, how could we support you in there? do you want your questions up front? What could we do? Thinking about going and starting, what is there anything that we could tell the trainer? Is that what we could do? What about your hiring manager? You know, what support would be good to put in place? Because actually being like, that's just a first journey in it, getting the job, but then you've got everything else after that. And I understand why there's hesitation, but actually businesses want to help people, well, hopefully, and offer support and things like that. So I really can understand it, but I think if a business isn't then supportive, they're probably not going to be the right home for you anyway, like ultimately. So like, but it's gonna take time, because equally I know talking about things can be really emotive. So I don't want to get upset when I'm just talking about this now. So it's just trying to find your own way in that, and hopefully, you know, then landing with a business that is going to offer that support in that recruitment journey, but thereafter too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's like you said, I know it's about just as much about you finding the right company as it is the company finding the right person. And if you don't feel comfortable, or you feel that, you know, you might be discriminated against because you might be opening up about something, then that's not the right company for you. You don't want a role there that's not going to support you going forward. So I think, you know, people always say, well, I've had a couple of instances where, you know, some of our returners have, you know, fallen pregnant. How do I address that in an interview? And I'm like, well, they're not assessing you in terms of obviously whether you're having a baby. They're assessing you in terms of whether you can do the role, etc. And if you know, you want a company that's going to support you, maternity leave only equates to 1% of your working career. So you want a company that supports you. And if they won't, then that's not the right organisation for you. So yeah, definitely agree on what Hannah said there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just coming to yourself, Becky, question, how do tech returners support me in my return to the workforce? What programs do you offer?
Yeah, so we offer Your Return to Tech, which is for people that are returning to technology, career, software engineering roles after a career break. Like I mentioned, we provide technology upskilling over an 8-week period. So that's in terms of software fundamentals, front end, back end. But most importantly, and hope James isn't watching this, I talk about, you know, the career and mindset management that we support, you know, things from confidence to resilience to interview preparation in terms of mindset, growth mindset, imposter syndrome. Those are really, really crucial areas of development that we offer. And I think it's something that's very, very important to everybody at Tech Returners. We understand the challenges. And like I said before, the mindset is one of the biggest challenges, and how we can support people going through that transition. And everything we do is like a transition. So rather than obviously, you know, coming from a return from a career break and going into a role, we help that transition of going through the program, upskilling, you know, building that confidence again to that successful transition, and then ongoing development of your career. And you're always part of our community. So everybody that's been through our program, you know, still, you know, we've got a Slack channel, so people share about resources, events, etc. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes to plan. We're going to throw a bit of a gathering at the end of this year, because some of you returners we've not even met in person before. So yeah, always part of the community.
Thank you, Becky. So I think that's all of the questions. It's been a very, very, very busy chat. So if any have been missed, we'll be sure to follow up on email to those. There are resources being shared within the chat as well. So please do make sure you take a look there. You can download our brochure if you want to learn more about the Your Return to Tech programme. Before we wrap up, is there any other points any of our panelists would like to cover off?
No, Shahana, you go first. Apologies.
Interrupting people. I just wanted to say that as a returner, don't sell yourself short. Confidence is our biggest kind of enemy. Push yourself like past that, you know, those voices in your head that tell you that you can't do it, because you can do it. And my story, I think, is a really perfect example. If I can go back after 19 years, I think anyone can. So yeah, don't listen to the voices in your head.
Yes, fantastic advice, Shahana. Thank you so much, and congratulations again. Darren?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what I think a lot of people have said on this call. Please do reach out to any of us if you've got any questions, if you've got any thoughts. Like, I'm more than happy to jump on calls with people and give advice. Like, so which I'm sure a lot of the team on this call would be happy to do too.
Absolutely, 100%. Fantastic. Anyone else? No? All good.
Thanks, Matt, for being fabulous.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. You can breathe now, Matt. You can breathe.
So for those people watching, this is the first time I've ever hosted a webinar, and I'm lack a lot of confidence in it. So thank you very much for putting up, and it has actually been wonderful. So everybody watching, thank you so much for coming along. Panelists, thank you for taking the time out. It has been wonderful hearing your stories and advice. And for those listening in, please do reach out for any support and advice. It's been wonderful hosting you all. So thank you very much indeed. And we will see you all again very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.